Welcome back to a Book a Day podcast. In the next few episodes, I'm going to take you on a journey through India. And of course, books will be our companion. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick different books each time, and through those writers, through their writings, I'm going to explore certain parts of India. For example, in today's episode, the book that I've got with me today is it's called Among the Cities, written by Jane Morris, where she's traveling across the world in different cities. It's a collection which was published after her travels of over 2 to 3 decades. And then at some point she comes to India and she travels to Darjeeling, a hill station in the east of India. And she writes about it. This was back in 1970, so of course it's going to be a little different, but also I'm sure it'll make many of you nostalgic about Indian hill stations, what they used to be and how different they've become. So without any delay, let me read this particular essay for you, which is called Hill Station Darjeeling. Here we go. I have mixed feelings about the Indian hill stations, some of which, Uti for instance, are altogether too neo British for my taste. The marvellous setting of Darjeeling, though the most spectacular of them all, easily puts history in its proper place. Darjeeling, the most celebrated of the Indian hill stations, is all smallness. It is small physically, of course, hard even to find upon the map of India. So tucked away is it like a trinket on the northern frontiers. But it is still smaller figuratively. It is the most deliberately diminutive town I know, as though it is always trying to make itself less substantial still. One crosses vast, scorched plains to reach it from Calcutta, over colossally winding rivers, through a landscape that has no end. But at the foot of the hills, Darjeeling sends a toy train to meet you. A gay little blue painted trundle of a train, which takes you puffing and chugging up through the forests and the tea gardens to the town. Little people greet you at the top. Little ponies canter about little streets. Hundreds and thousands of merry little children tumble all about you. The town is perched upon a narrow ridge about 7,000 feet up, with deep gorges falling away on either side. And when I arrived there for the first time, I found it swirled all around by cloud. It felt curiously private and self contained, like a childish fancy, I thought, a folly, a town magically reduced in scale and shut off from the world by vapor. But then, as to a crash of drums in a coup de theatre, a gap momentarily appeared in the ever shifting clouds, and there, standing tremendously in the background, their snows flushed pink with sunlight, attended by range upon range of foothills, and serenely surveying the expanse of the world, stood the divine mass of the Himalayan mountains. I saw Darjeeling's point, and cut myself down to size. Some visitors never see the snow peaks at all, for they are often invisible for days at a time. Anyway, there is no need to go on about them. It is enough to say that to see Kanchenjunga and its peers from Darjeeling in the cool of the morning is one of the noblest experiences of travel. It is a kind of vision, It has moved generations of pilgrims to mysticism and even more to overwriting. Yet, it is not the spectacle of the Himalayas that sets the style of Darjeeling. It is simply the presence. The town lives in the knowledge of them and so acknowledges another scale of things. Its littleness is not inferiority complex, but self awareness, and it gives the community a particular intensity and vivacity. Darjeeling is built in layers, neatly along its ridge like an exhibition town, from the posh hotels and the villas at the top to the jumbled bazaar quarter at the bottom. And all the way down this dense tiered mass of buildings, life incessantly buzzes, hums, and fizzes. Darjeeling's energies seem to burn the brighter for their smallness, and not a corner of the town is still or empty or dull. It is a place of astonishing cheerfulness. Everybody seems to be feeling simply splendid. Perhaps they all are, for the air is magnificently brilliant, the heat is seldom too hot, and the cold not often icy. The 19th century Welshman who first put Darjeeling on the map saw it from the start as a sanatorium, and the Rajas of Sikkim kindly handed it over to the British Governor General of India for the purpose of enabling the servants of his government suffering from sickness to avail themselves of its advantages. Today, Darjeeling's high spirits never seem to flag. The children never stop playing, the youths never end their horseplay, the tourists never tire of clattering hilariously about the town on hired ponies. The cicadas sing all day long in the gardens, and over and again from down the hill come the hoots and puffs of the little trains, which prefer to travel gregariously and come merrily up from Siliguri 2 or 3 at a time. To the stranger, it all seems intenser, more concentrated than real life, and especially after dark when the braziers are aglow in the alleys of the bazaar and the hotel lights comfortably shine above. Then half Darjeeling turns out for a stroll at Choda, a triangular piazza halfway along the ridge. And on my first evening in Darjeeling, I went and sat on a bench there and watched the town go by. Beyond the square, the ridge fell away abruptly into the night, and there were only the dark foothills out there, and a suggestion of the snow peaks and the stars that now and then appeared in unnatural brilliance through the shifting clouds. To and fro against this celestial backdrop, the people of Darjeeling loitered, strolled, and gossiped like Spaniards on their evening promenade, or more exotic Venetians at St. Mark's. There were tall, flashing girls in saris and nose clips. There were brown, gnome-like men in fur caps. There were slant-eyed children of astonishing beauty and boys with wild, eager faces like Genghis Khan. There were monks and priests and soldiers and grand Indian gentlemen in tweeds and giggly Indian girls in cotton party frocks. There were mountain porters hastening back from work, carrying rucksacks and tent poles. There were ancient men with plaited pigtails. There were 2 hippies and a nun and 4 French tourists, and me watching it all as in hallucination from a corner bench beside the bandstand. It was like a microcosm of the world assembled up there from the plains and mountains, ushered into that little square, reduced to a neater and more manageable size, and given double shots of adrenaline. "What is your country?" a man demanded as we met face to face and unavoidably on a narrow hill track. And when I told him Wales to the west of England, he asked further, "Is it a high pass to get there?" Unimaginably high are the passes, indescribably remote the valleys, from which, in the country since Captain Lloyd founded Darjeeling, the population of the town has found its way to the ridge. This is a frontier settlement. Some of those snow peaks are in India proper, some in Sikkim and Bhutan, some in the Kingdom of Nepal, some in the People's Republic of Tibet. The town stands on the edge of mysteries, and its people have migrated from many parts of the eastern Himalayas and from the plains below. The old sanatorium of the Mem Sahibs is far more nowadays. Not merely a celebrated resort, but an important bazaar, a center of local government, and a kind of ethnic demonstration. No small town in the world can show so many kinds and types and manners of people. The little Lepchas, the original inhabitants of the region, are seldom more than 5 feet high, but immensely strong and agile. The Sherpas from eastern Nepal, the high altitude porters of Everest and Kanchenjunga, move with an inexorable striding impetus, as though they cannot stop. The Tibetans often look immensely sophisticated, trendy almost, ready for any Chelsea discotheque with their flared pants and impeccable complexions. The Gurkhas look soldiers through and through, always marching, even off parade, with high head and chest out. One sees few sleepy or dullard faces among those mongoloid faces of the north. All seem eminently capable, straight, square-set people who look as though deposited in a Brooklyn back alley or one of the remoter village of the southern Urals. They would instantly find their feet. But they are only one element in the Darjeeling melange. There are many other kinds of Nepalese, for instance, Gurungs, Magars, Tamangs, Newars. There are refugees from Tibet proper and Indian Army soldiers from the Punjab and Rajasthan. Here comes a slim dark girl in blue pajamas who might be Annamese or perhaps Malay. Here are 4 Rajput officers of the garrison with their thin black sandhurst moustaches and their suede boots. The Hindu holy man beside the lane is smeared mysteriously with yellow ochre. The Bengali family being hoisted on its ponies is all guileless anticipation. Proud young father holding the baby, mother in gold and red sari, assiduously combing the already immaculate hair of a small boy, apparently dressed for an exceptionally extravagant wedding. The eyes that peer at you between bushy beard and bundled turban are, of course, the eyes of a Sikh. The shy porcelain smile from the lady at the next table is a smile from the palm trees and sands of Madras. In the autumn, they have races at Darjeeling, and then one may see this demographic jumble at its most cheerful. The racecourse is endearingly claimed to be the smallest in the world. At the end of a race, the competitors run breakneck off the course into the approach road, an unnerving experience for newcomers. The meetings are not very formal. Young men play football in the middle of the track. Between races, the horses graze casually on grassy spaces roundabout. A dribble of racegoers stumbles down the mountain track from the town above, carrying umbrellas and race cards and a stream of jeeps. and rattly taxis blasts its way along the motor road. Still, the traditional procedures are honored. The races are run by the Gymkhana Club of Darjeeling, and in the official stand, the stewards and judges, mostly army officers, sit in well cut elegance with immensely superior ladies. Sometimes the senior steward takes a stroll about the enclosure, moving with the lordly benevolence common to racing bigwigs from Longchamps to Kentucky Downs. The race card is printed with every refinement of the racegoer's jargon, and the rules are, of course, severe. It would take an iconoclast indeed to defy the decrees of the Darjeeling Gymkhana Club. But all around that grandstand, swarming about the bookies at their little wooden stands, picnicking up the grassy slopes behind, haggling with the sellers of nuts or the purveyors of infallible tips, is the infinite variety of Darjeeling, impervious to regulation. Such a conglomeration of bone structures, lifestyles, tastes, gestures, such a cacophony of voices, deep, cracked, sing song, or bell like, such a marvelous fugue of history performed there in the intersections of history, religion, or ambition that have brought this potpourri of the humankind to place its bets on the fourth race. The bell rings, the flap drops. Hurtling around the track in billows of dust come 3 or 4 black Tibetan ponies, ridden at desperate speed and with savage concentration by fierce little cheek jockeys rocketing around that mini track as the crowd rises tiptoe with excitement until they shoot out of sight with cheers, laughter, and catcalls behind the grandstand and off the course. It is as though the scouts of Attila have passed through. The stranger may feel a certain sense of shock, but the stewards do not seem disconcerted. Jolly good show, they say to each other. Hell of a good race. For the most dogmatic progressive will not deny to little Darjeeling a tug of nostalgia. It is harmless. It is only a fragrance of earlier times, a Victorian bouquet still lingering up here along the ridge. Darjeeling is largely built in that gabbled, semi-chalet style so dear to Victorian pleasure seekers and imposed upon its gallimaufry of peoples is a decorous pork bonnet, tea and biscuit style. Nobody in their senses would wish it otherwise. It is an essential part of Darjeeling's minuscule mystique and used to suggest to me a musical box town where pretty little melodies would tinkle in the sunshine, while clockwork figures in top hats and bustles jerkily proceeded along the mall. The very names of the place carried this old evocation. Happy Valley, Step Aside, the Esplanade, and the main road to the plains is still known in Darjeeling as the Cart Road. Some of the hotels are deliciously Victorian. The porridge at the Windermere's Hotel is, I'm told, by unimpeachable authorities, unsurpassed in Scotland, while the tea at the Mount Everest is tea, my dear, just like we used to have it. Shopping in Darjeeling too is agreeably old school. Patiently attentive are the assistants, instantly to hand is the chair for Mem Sahib, and one almost expects to find, winging it across the Kashmiri shawls and the Tibetan prayer wheels, one of those wire pulley change receptacles one used to see in provincial English drapers long ago. Most of Darjeeling's pleasure would perfectly satisfy our grandparents. There is the classic pleasure, for instance, which I denied myself, of getting up at 3 in the morning to see the sunrise and the top of Everest from Tiger Hill. There are the pleasures of excursions to places of interest like Ghoom Rock or Caventer's Dairy Farm. There are the pleasures of identifying wildflowers or sketching or looking at animals in the outdoor zoo. There are pony rides, of course, and there is miniature golf. And when I was there, Rudiger was being performed by the pupils of St. Paul's School. There is the pleasure of walking. In most of Darjeeling, no cars are allowed, and this is one of the walkingest towns on earth. One may walk decorously around the town itself or through the botanical gardens. One may walk into the foothills for a picnic, or one may, stocking up with tinned pineapple and sleeping bags, engage a team of Sherpas and stride off into the distant mountains. Every year, more people go to trekking from Darjeeling, and a very healthy pastime it must be. No place like Darjeeling. One stalwart matron reproachfully observed, as, staggering beneath the weight of her accoutrements, she passed me doing nothing in particular over a glass of lemonade. Nowhere like Darjeeling for blowing the cobwebs away. As I say, our grandparents would have loved it, and sometimes Darjeeling's scrapbook essence can be, to the sentimental visitor, distinctly moving. On Jalpahar Hill, at the eastern end of the ridge, there is a small military cantonment, complete with parade ground, garrison church, and shops for the soldiery. I was once walking through this camp, enjoying its display of the military aesthetic, polished brass, regimental signs in whitewashed pebbles, the clump of ammunition booths, and the bristle of sergeantly moustaches, when an unexpected sound reached me from the parade ground behind. With a slow and melancholy introductory wail, the Gurkha pipe band broke into the sad, sad music of a highland lament. I stopped dead in my dusty tracks, and the tears came to my eyes. For what generations of my own people, I thought, had stirred to that music in their exiles long ago, and how strange and sweet and lonely it sounded in these hills of the Indian frontier. "Can I help you?" inquired a passerby, seeing me standing there. "You're not ill?" "Not ill," I assured him as I moved on up the hill, "only susceptible." Every morning before breakfast, I used to walk up Observatory Hill. This wooded hump, rising directly above the Chaurarasta, is holy to the Buddhists, who have a shrine upon its summit. All along the steep and winding path to the top, mendicants invite the contributions of the pious, grave holy men who bow like archbishops, jolly old crones, coveys of chirpy, inquisitive children. Two grinning stone lions guard the entrance to the holy compound. The trees are hung all over with white prayer flags, and mysteriously from the recesses of the shrine one may hear the incessant murmur of prayers and tingling of bells. There are always people up there. Some are praying, some meditating, some reading sacred scripts, and one I met each day used to stand all alone among the bushes looking towards Tibet and writing in a large black notebook. If the weather is clear, there is a glorious view of Kanchenjunga and its peers, and while they were cooking my eggs in the hotel down below, I used to sit on the grass alone and marvel at the immunity of Darjeeling. It has, it seemed to me, escaped. It knows its own dimension and is satisfied. Though its name is famous everywhere, still it remains a small town of the Himalayan foothills, very close to the soil and the temple. There is material squalor enough, but seldom, I think, despair, still less degradation. The loads may be crippling, but still the porters find the energy to smile. The children and the chickens may be in and out of the kitchen, but the mothers never seem to get cross. The girls laugh as though they laboriously chop firewood in the thickets, and the bundles of hay piled upon the backs of the laborers are speckled all over with flowers of pink and blue. It is as though by an unconscious exertion of values, Darjeeling has selected what it wants from the world below and rejected all the rest. And such is the inner variety of the place. So lavish are its colors, so remote is it even now from the pressures of the industrialized society, that within its own limits it can afford to be tolerant. There is nothing censorious about the place. One may look, behave, dress, believe more or less as one pleases. During my stay in Darjeeling, I often saw a young American dressed in the habit of a Buddhist monk. He was studying at a nearby seminary, I was told, and wore the brown cloak, the sandals, and the hairband as to the manner born. Nobody appeared the least surprised by this anomalous figure, and even his father, who was paying him a visit from the States, seemed entirely at home with the phenomenon. "I'm going to drink, Jimmy," I heard him saying to his son one day, puffing at his cigar, raising his glass. "I'm going to drink to all these wonderful, wonderful people of Darjeeling." For there is an innocent merit to this place. One feels better and kinder for a visit to Darjeeling. Those stupendous mountains in the clouds have set the scale right and adjusted the balance. It is no good fussing them to say, "It cannot last," and this sententious thought, which occurred to me every morning after 10 minutes or so upon the hill, used to remind me that my eggs were waiting for me down the lane, and down I would hurry past that merry line of beggars, tagged by swarms of children and encouraged by avuncular sages, to where the waiter in his red turban and his polished brass badge, looking anxiously from the dining room door, was waiting to whisk the cover off my porridge. And that's how the essay ends. I hope you got the idea of what Darjeeling used to be like in 1970. Clearly, it was a lot different, but I would argue the fundamental spirit of the town, that remains the same. When you talk about human emotions, what you feel when you go there, that remains pretty much the same, and it's wonderfully captured by Jan Morris. Of course, this was written over half a century ago, but it's still beautiful, still feels relevant, and it's such a pleasure to read. So I hope you enjoyed, and I'll come back in the next episode, and I'll cover more travels. I'll pick another book, and I'll travel to another corner of India and share what the book says about it. Thank you very much for listening. I'll catch you the next time. Thank you.